Welcome, everybody. We are back with one of our final presentations of last year, and still I've got too many screens open, and then I hear all kinds of sounds in my ears, and you should not be hearing those. So now this is good. Again, welcome everybody to yet another workshop, the second one with Robert Noall. So Robert, excited to have you back. We had some good reactions on your first session a couple of weeks ago, so that's always a good thing to hear. So we're looking forward to your follow-up session, which is again then a session about outletting, and this time it's outletting versus the man-to-man marking situations. So it's going to be a cool session. But yeah, let me help you remind everybody again, as usual. Let's make this an interactive session. Just before we went live here, Robert told me he loves his questions to interrupt his presentation. So we're going to try and do that as much as possible, but that obviously is up to you. Let's make this an interactive session. Let's make bring your questions, bring your remarks. If Robert is saying something that you disagree with, go ahead, let us know in the comment sections, and we'll make sure that we'll make this interactive and a discussion, because asking questions is the best way of learning. But okay, we've got several people in the room already. I'm seeing coaches from India, I'm seeing coaches from the UK, and from all over Europe again. So that is always good to see. Robert, the floor is all yours. Outletting versus a man-to-man. Here we go.
Yes, thank you very much. For the people who were not with the first workshop, I will give myself obviously an introduction of who I am, what I'm doing in Hockey World at the moment. But as Ernst said, please ask questions. I like answering questions as I'm going because it will break up the workshop a little bit. So please, I would love to hear your input. Now, I'm actually English myself. Went to university in London and studied sports coaching science. But I moved Netherlands in 2015 because I wanted to spend a year coaching after university, and decided to stay here full time, work here full time for many years, almost 10 years now. And at the moment, I'm a technical director and the men's first coach of a club in Leiden called Electo. And I'm also the coach of the girls under 14 regional team. And I'm a video analyst for the women's team in Zoetermeer. Now, what we're going to be looking at is the outletting against man-to-man marking. There's a culture change at the moment where it's going a lot from zone marking back to man marking. So lots of teams are playing zone marking and man marking, but also in a hybrid between the two. Last week, we looked at zone marking and how we can train against that, talking about the use of the high ball, looking at the use of pre-scanning. What we're going to start with is the same as last time. We're going to look at some videos. I have more videos and also junior video and women's video. So for coaches not doing men's hockey, they can also have a reference point. So if that's helpful for you, please let me know with a question or a comment if it's more helpful having separate and different age groups and male and female hockey. So jumping straight into the video, see if I can get this into the full screen again. Here we have, if it's going to load for me, let's have a look. Earlier I went a little bit slow, so give me a second. Yes, we're there. So
here we go.
What's happening here? Team in yellow are starting with the ball, and it's the second half has just started, and the team in white are putting a lot of pressure on, and they're playing marking. Now, to stop here, there's a situation that comes a lot in man-to-man marking. At the back of the field, we can see, let me see if I can bring up my, 1 second, to this one. See if I can bring up the laser. Is this able for you to see at the moment? The red
No.
circle?
No,
okay.
No.
No problem. Then what I will do is I will focus on talking and making it clear.
That's the best thing.
There are two players defending man-to-man marking, and in the midfield, you've got 3 players for the team in yellow who are being man-marked, and you've got a free defender who's in the middle, trying to focus on the long balls, and the other team are playing in white with one less at the front so they can keep an overload in their fence. Extremely common way of playing man marking. And in the situation, what's very important is a team in yellow are trying to make an overload. That is the goal of the press, which we talked about in the last video. Just having a small issue with the video playing the way I want it to. Okay. In this situation, I'm just going to have it like this, if that's okay, Ernst, because it's a lot easier for the controls.
Yep, no problem.
So it's not exactly full screen, but it's a lot easier. So in this situation, the team have put a lot of pressure on the ball and they're trying to force it to go to one side. And what we want to see in this situation is lots of dynamic receiving. The midfielder gets the ball here and he's already looking to find an overload on one side of the field. Unfortunately, he can't find it and the ball goes over the sideline. We have a second video here. The ball is on the right-hand side and it's played quickly. And we're constantly looking for space. Now, the advantage of playing against man-to-man, when you find an overload, you usually get to go very high in the field, because if you can find an overload, the other team can't put pressure on the ball because they're focused on their own man. That's an advantage or a disadvantage if you look at it from the defensive side. Constantly looking for an overload. As you can see, the team in yellow is switching positions in midfield, and this really helps in making it difficult for the other team to use their man marking. And something I would really like to highlight is the quality and the speed of this receiving. Have a look if this works. The quality and the receiving of the player in the midfield when he receives the ball. Instead of like the zone marking, he receives it and he's looking for a pass. Instantly, no, he's trying to get away from the free defender. Free defender at the moment is on the right-hand side of the field at the back there. So with the receiving, instantly to the other side, they're able to attack on the left-hand side. Unfortunately, the ball speed is not high enough to find an attack, but it's very important dynamic receiving. Move to another video. Here we go. Other team are communicating, looking to see where they can put pressure on. Unfortunately, the ball is out of the field at the moment, but we play a high ball into space on the left-hand side here. And for the people with the workshop last time, you can remember that playing a high ball into space is very good against man marking, but they've actually played it onto their own player. We gained the ball, actually, the referee decided there's no 5 meters, but I think this type of pass is actually a mistake in terms of tactical decisions, because we're actually playing the ball to where they've got a numbers advantage. And if I pause it while the ball's in the air, I'm not sure if you can see it on your screens there, but if this doesn't go right, he's actually got to play a 1 against 3. But luckily, we get the call of the referee, we take it fast. And as I said earlier, if you do break through, it's very difficult for the other team to get people behind the ball and make a decision. We actually get a penalty stroke here, ends up being a goal. Even though the high ball was something that's very good to play into space, the idea of the high ball here was good, but it should have been past the player and not onto the player. Here is a situation where we're playing a high ball into the space where the player isn't, instead of where the player is, and you instantly see a big difference. Also, the forwards have run into the inside of the field and they are purposely making space for the outside channels, the space. There is no space here when you play against zone marking because they're not running with their opponents. So when we're playing man-to-man marking, we really want to play the ball into the space with the high ball. And as you can see, the ball goes into the high space over the player and he receives it on the line. It just goes over the line. But these are the type of high balls we would like to see when we're playing against man marking. Now, I have an example from a ladies' game. Other team are playing man marking, ball goes across. And in this situation, it's very difficult to come out of the space because we received the ball closed. And it's not a dynamic receiving action, it's a closed action. And that's something I would like to look at, especially in the training shortly, is that If we are receiving pressure in a man marking, we need to receive the ball in an open stance so we can attack. And if this player had done more movement when she received the ball, she could have been able to find something forwards. I think the patience of these two players from the team in green here is very good. They're looking for a pass, taking their time, but we really want to stop the situation from happening by using a dynamic receiving action. Here's the last example I wanted to show. This is from under 14s match. The team in green are putting pressure on, and the team in pink are trying to attack on the left side. And as you can see, there's lots of movement after receiving the ball. Movement on the ball, movement away from the ball, and always looking to see where we can find space. Ball gets on the sideline, passing into space. And we can't always transfer the ball. In this situation, we could have transferred the ball, in my opinion, but it's about receiving and moving at the same time. It's very difficult to put pressure on the ball if you move while receiving. So we're going to be looking at moving while receiving.
Okay, we got a question here for you already.
Oh, yes, please.
So we've got Josephine here, coach in the UK. And so what are your thoughts on players being individually focused on defending roles, man-to-man, versus team-focused, zone? And does this happen at all?
Very good question. There's something that we've been using a lot recently, especially in my under 14s team, is called man responsibility. Now, traditional man marking is you have two players and they're always standing next to each other and you run around in circles. But the higher abilities and higher level and higher ages, you realize that if you just follow your own player, it's not possible to have a good structure. And really what we call man responsibility is, okay, I'm the left midfielder, the player in my area, that's my responsibility. But if they're trying to play the ball along the line, I will sort and think, maybe I'm going to go for an interception and I'll step away from my own player because the line is my responsibility. Now, if my player runs to the inside and I'm playing man marking, I have the responsibility for that player, meaning I would have to go with that player. So it's a hybrid system between the two. And a lot of Dutch teams, even at the highest level in Hoofdklasse, especially in the ladies at the moment, are playing a hybrid system, which is called man responsibility. And what they're trying to do is, my player cannot receive the ball, but how can I help my teammates? And now in this presentation, you can see you've got the left forward who stuck a stick out to the left-hand side, so the player cannot receive the ball on the sideline. Ernst, if you would like to show my screen, please.
There we go.
And you can see, thank you very much. And we can see here, the player is blocking the passing line, but he's also his responsibility for his man. Now, if his player does get the ball, he'd have to run towards it. In traditional man marking, from maybe 10 years ago, this player would be standing a lot closer to his own player. But that player's come onto the inside because he's got the man responsibility for the right back, but he's also got the responsibility in the zone marking for the inside of the field. So to answer the question, man marking individually is not the way I would call it. I would more call it, what's the structure we want to play in while still marking the other team? And I think in terms of individual, I would focus more on the skills that are needed to intercept the ball, the skills that are needed to win a 1-against-1 on your forehand, on your backhand. How do you defend against a high ball? The individual defending skills that you need. Also, footwork is very important. But I think man responsibility is extremely important to learn players, especially from a young age, that it's not just their man they are marking, they're also marking a section of the field.
Yeah. The follow-up question from Josephine was, handing over. Do you find ambiguity with that?
In regards to switching players, I think you mean. So if players are switching in the field, I think that's what you mean in terms of your question. No, because if you're playing man responsibility or player responsibility, you're thinking, okay, I'm marking the player that's closest to my position. I am left forward. That means the player closest to my position would be the right defender. But maybe the right defender has gone to the inside and now the right midfielder has dropped back. That means that that's my responsibility. And I think if you focus more on the responsibility side of the man marking, as opposed to the, oh, that player with the number 9 and the yellow stick is my player. I've seen it in juniors happening. They'll run with them all the way to the bench because they're going to change substitute, and a new player will come in and they'll run all the way back. That's not what we want to see. So it's responsibility. So if we're teaching players to run behind the other player like a sheep, then I think it's very difficult to switch players. But if we're teaching them, mark someone who's in your responsibility zone, then I think the handing over of players is actually a lot easier. Any more questions for now, or shall I move on to the how do we train this?
Let's move on for now.
Okay, so I got just a few examples. I've underlined the first two because it's something I want to look at in the training. We need to have good one-against-one eliminating skills if we play against man marking. Lots of times coaches will speak about if you run here at this time when it's like the sun is shining like this and the water on the field is this much, you need to run. It's too complicated. As I said with the zone marking, teach the players the skills. I'm zooming in. Can the player pass the ball while running left, right, and forwards with a good pass? If they can do that, it's actually a lot easier to play against man marking. And dynamic receiving, I showed you how important that is. Every time that you receive the ball closed, it gives the opponent's time to put more pressure on the ball and more pressure onto the ball. Passing into space is what I tried to show with the high ball. If the other team playing marking and you pass further than the defensive line and they can run towards it, you can get a good fast break. High ball on the run is good. It's a difficult skill to learn and practice, but while a defender is running or a back player is running, being able to throw a high ball is very good, because while the other team are defending in this situation, if this player number 8 at the back with the ball, if he can run with the ball into the middle and then play a high ball to the right-hand side over the opponent, that's really easy to beat a player and isolate them and attack with a 2-against-1 on the right side. So being able to lift the ball, a high ball, an aerial while moving is also a very good skill that we need to be able to play against man marking. Attacking the left foot.
Maybe another
Yes?
question here to interrupt you.
Of course.
I originally had the question marked for Q&A at the end, but let's just move in here. From
Yes, okay.
Tim Matkovic, coaching in Germany. So, hi Robert, is there a specific game plan that you play versus the man-to-man? And then he also followed up with, we're talking a lot about space here. Is there any deepness in what to do with space when it opens up?
Yeah, very, very good question. It really depends on the team that I'm coaching. I think with the men's, we talk a lot about how do we force the other team to play out of their comfort zone. A lot of teams in the pool that we play in play zone marking, but the teams that play man marking against us, we usually put quite a lot of pressure on. We actually like that because we like to stretch the field. By stretching the field, we can, when we do get an overload on one of the sides, we're able to attack the space. But the problem with stretching the field against man marking is if it doesn't work, you've got a lot of players on the wrong side of the ball. So it's kind of risk management is the way I would describe it. I personally find it difficult with the men's team if we're playing against man marking, because we play zone marking, and we play zone marking relatively lower on the field because we want to put pressure low in the field to have space for our counters. But if we're stretching it in attack and playing low when we're defending, there's a mismatch in height from our forwards. So we're searching at the moment to try and think, okay, but when we're defending, we want to have only 2 forwards high or only 1 high. So I think it's important to think about the transition between how do we want to attack, how do you want to defend is important, and less so what the other teams are doing. If the other team is playing man-to-man marking, we want to play a different way in attack, but our tactical and our strategy won't change that much because the transitions we want to keep the same, because being able to make decisions fast in a transition will give you a lot more benefit than changing that a lot. Now, I did say it changes depending on team. With the girls under 14s, we play man-to-man every minute of every game, full pressure. And we do that because we want to improve the defending skills of every single player in the team. And if we play low in the zone marking, we're not improving the skills in a 1-against-1 situation. In terms of the deepness and space, I think it's difficult to learn and train it, but it's good to talk about it. It's good to say, if we're playing against man-to-man and we break, this is where the space will be. And usually the space, as I showed in the video earlier, is the other side of the field on midfield. You've got a low transfer. That's when you transfer the ball around the back. And you've got a high transfer that's usually with a pivot player. And the high transfer, I personally call that the golden transfer, because if you can do it against man-to-man marking, it's almost 100% certain you've got a free attack on the other side. So that's something I would talk about definitely if you're playing against man-to-man marking, the golden transfer.
Okay, let's move on to training all of this.
Yes, no problem. There are many things we can do against man-to-man marking, but I think elimination skills and dynamic receiving, if they're good, you don't usually have to spend a lot of time on other things because the players can make decisions themselves. So what I have done is I have made some exercises as examples to work on these things. But same as last time, what I like to do is I like to start with a warm-up, something that's very simple that the players are able to do at the start of the training to get used to it. And I would do this even with high-level players because we want to practice warm up. We also want to have the players improving on the skill, and I call it zoomed in. We really want to zoom in as far as possible. We don't want to talk about how the players are playing, where they need to stand. No, can the player receive the ball to the left, to the right while moving? It's that simple. And if the answer is no, improve that before you get your coach board out. Improve that before you start drawing 11 against 11 tactics. So we have a player and a player. This time I've made it a lot bigger. I hope this is better, Ernst.
Perfect.
Yes. Okay. So we've got two players, and very common what you can do is you can have the player, you put a hockey ball in, can have the player running up and then passing the ball. But what I want to do is I want to have them receiving dynamically. And we've got three goalkeepers in the men's team that I coach. We want to be able to use them and have them part of it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to pass the ball to my teammate. Looks very similar to the one in the zone marking because I like these type of exercises. And we're going to receive the ball to the right or the left. But it's extremely important that when we're receiving the ball, we need to be receiving the ball in a large action. So what I would like to do is instead of making it a small space, I'm actually going to make it a lot wider. So when this player receives the ball, he's going to be going to the side either way. And then he's going to be giving a pass into space. Now, this is extremely simple exercise, but the reason I like to do this is because you can really spend a lot of time and focus on the first part of this exercise. Receiving the ball to the right, we want to make sure that the stick is far away from our body, but we can also increase the difficulty. Now, we can increase difficulty by getting the player to look like he's going to receive the ball to the left, and then at the last minute go to the right. Now we can increase the difficulty even more by adding, not sure if it's going to be, let me see if I can make it another color, a yellow hockey stick, good enough. We can put a stick or a plank here, and the player is not only receiving the ball dynamically, he or she is receiving the ball dynamically, and then he has to lift it over the stick and then pass it. And these type of exercises can be very fine-tuned to improve the skills of the players. Now, we can also say this player has to pass harder or with a little bit of a bounce. But this skill here around the cones over the stick, this is something that the players need to be doing at 100% speed. We could also change this exercise.
Jennifer has a question.
Yes.
Jennifer has a question. How long would you do this exercise for in one session? And do you only do the unopposed reps?
In fine-tuning the skill, I always start with unopposed reps. And the reason for that is it needs to be at the quality that's needed, so you don't have to think about it. And if you're thinking about a skill, and I know practice under pressure is the best way to learn decision-making, But in my opinion, to improve technique, especially if the players understand why they're doing it, I would do unopposed reps. How long would I do this? 6 minutes, maybe 8. 10 is a push. But what I would do is I would start and then I'd say, okay, now receive with a lift. And then 2 minutes later, I would say, now pass the ball harder. And then I would say 2 minutes. So it's kind of loads of mini exercises in one, as opposed to the same thing for 8 minutes. It's a very good question. I do these exercises a lot, and I like to start with them because it gets the players warm. And I also like doing it instead of what a lot of teams like doing at the start of the training, is like to pass to each other from a 10-meter apart for 5 minutes. I would rather do an exercise like this to warm the players' stick skills up.
Follow up from Josephine here is how do the players respond to this, and how long would they focus for?
Ooh, that's a very, very subjective question. These players that I'm coaching in the men's team or from the juniors would be able to do this for a very long time, because you keep changing how it is and making it harder, making it faster, or you can make it slower. And I think the secret to keeping players motivated is put a lot of energy in these type of exercises. Yeah, I'm sitting in my office at home, so I'm not going to shout through the webcam to you, but putting a lot of energy in and calling their names and saying faster and then giving them tips and being motivated usually helps. It is not exercise, but you want to let them do it and then walk away and come back in 10 minutes. No.
That makes sense. Okay, moving on.
Yeah. So they'll go here and they will make a goal. Very simple. So let me get rid of this one. Going to put this into my exercise. Going to close it down. And I always like to start with a focus. And the focus that we want is dynamic receiving, large movements. And what's very common in exercise like this is you'll put 2 cones, but I like 3 or 4, or sometimes 5, because if the player's only receiving half a meter, they're not going to beat their player. They need to be receiving 2 meters away from their body. And it's a very difficult exercise to really put pressure on the players and make large movements. So that's what I would like for the focus. I always write a focus so my assistant can see that, and then he obviously focus on that. Simple exercise. Pass the ball in, receive, receive. To the side. Very simple. And then what I would do here is I would say left only, and then maybe we do right only. Choose self with a bounce. So I'll put in those different variations and I'll change them. And I don't have to explain them to the players. I'll just say, okay, now with a bounce. Now you can choose yourself. And that keeps them going and motivated. Doing exercises like this are always, in my opinion, a lot better than a dry pass form in a square, passing around and then hitting on the goal. So this is what we want to start with. Now, I don't currently have training made for this session, so I'm going to put it in here. And we can add location, everything. It's not important. We're going to train 8 o'clock, 15 minutes before. I like to put in the coach notes how many players we have, 18, and 2 keepers for this session. And then the training that I just made, the drill, it's going to be in here. I just drag it in. And then we've got the exercise. We're going to be doing this for 8 minutes. And the intensity, I want to have it as an 8. I like having the intensity because if you can see which exercise need to have more pressure from the trainers to keep the speed up. Now, even though I've changed this dynamic receiving warm up and put it into here, I can change these and it won't change the template, which I really like. So actually, I don't want to do left and right only. I just want to start off with choosing self, looking the other way, and also with a lift and bounce together. So I can change it and it won't change my template, which is brilliant. Because if I do this exercise again, it's already there. So I've made 3 other exercises for this. We're going to start with it. dynamic receiving exercise for 20 minutes. I'm going to see if I can make this larger. Doesn't make the exercises larger, unfortunately, but I will zoom in a second, no problem. So this exercise should be nice and big on the screen now. This exercise I've drawn up, it's two different colors. We've got black and red. I like to differentiate in the colors so it's clearer what players are doing. The pivot player is going to run into this around the cone, receive it, and then drive to the side and then pass the ball to the left midfielder. Left midfielder will pass the ball into the corner, and that player will attack the circle doing skills. Now, they're doing skills because I can also get them starting with the elimination skills that we're going to be using later in the training. Now, as you can see, the route of the player from the red and the black around the circle is different. I like, personally, putting cones out and say to the players that it's two defenders. Any skills you want to use is completely up to you, but they don't have a set route because in hockey, there is no set route. Maybe the player will pull the ball to the right-hand side, pull the ball to the right-hand side, and then shoot on their forehand. Or on the next session or the next rep that they will do, maybe they'll lift it over the cones or go around them and then lift it over the second one. So we're trying to make it dynamic. Now, dynamic receiving for this exercise is good. We've got dynamic receiving in the middle, but as I said, every position needs to have dynamic receiving. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a second part to this exercise. So we're going to go into the dynamic receiving exercise, close down my training session, go back to my collections. So this is our dynamic receiving exercise that we have done. And here, what I want to start like this, but after I would like the players to receive dynamically on all positions. I could write that over here. Or I can add to the playbook. I will load up my old one that I made, which is this one. And what I can do is instead of having this player receiving the ball on the side, the right midfielder in this situation, I'm going to have that player receive dynamically. So all I have to do is add an extra line. And this squiggly line tells the trainer or me that this player is receiving dynamically. Now, I'm not going to do it for the rest of them because I don't want to waste time. But I'll even write it in there, dynamic, that player's thinking about it. I can also add a stick in here to say that they're going to lift it over the stick, also possible. Really be creative in your sessions and try and make as many obstacles, but don't make it, what do you call that? Don't make it guaranteed that they're always going to do the same thing. Don't give them too many constraints. We want to have them transferring the ball and receiving dynamically. Every single receiving they should do in this exercise is dynamic, and we're doing that because we want to practice it for later. Tell the players at the start of the session, we're going to practice against man-to-man marking. Because of that, we need to receive dynamically. Because of that, we need to work on this, and tell them at the start, and they'll be invested. And I think if you tell players why they're doing something, the reason behind that, certainly from an age of 14, they'll really be invested. So I'm going to add this into my session, close this down. And now we've got the first exercise. We can see how that happens. And then we have our second exercise. And we can see exactly how that's going to see during the session. And we'll add that. Now, instead of completing the whole session, I'm just going to show the two other exercises that I thought about. This one looks extremely complicated, but I love these exercises. Just ignoring the lines at the moment and just looking at what we have. Player one will pass the ball to player two, and he will just run towards the cones and attack them and do any form of elimination skills that they want to. Dragging to the inside, a lift, turn, and they'll pass the ball to number three, who will do the same thing, and this player receive the ball back. Now, this exercise, if we're really going to zoom in and look at it that way, I'm just going to clear this frame completely. Yes, I do want to clear it. And the reason I want to practice this exercise is this player receives the ball from somebody and then is going to Actually, I'm going to put players in. The other team are yellow. There's some players here, and this player is working on making actions, looking for space, looking for space. This player will receive the ball, looking for space, trying to go around the other players. And the reason I want to practice this is because if we go back to the videos, if possible, I will just bring it across. It should work straight away if I'm lucky. And in this situation, we can see the players need to have the elimination skills on this area in the field. Dynamically moving, elimination skills, moving the ball. And we can talk about where the players need to run when they receive it. We could talk about the attacking movements, but you can't think about where you need to run when you've got this much pressure. It's all about the dynamic receiving and the elimination skills. Going to go back to my session. In this exercise, you can see that the players are just doing elimination skills. They pass on the next player, elimination skills. And here we do a give and go. And a give and go against man marking is very, very strong, because if you're attacking and you're going the line over the line over the line to the opponent, they have to run with you. And if they don't run with you, then you've got to overload. And if they do run with you, you can pass the ball around and then the other side is open. So in this situation, lots of elimination skills. Now, with this exercise, which is very similar to what I said earlier, I don't put the cones the same way on the whole field. Number 5 is attacking here, but there are 5 cones instead of 3. So it's kind of simulating 2 defenders or a defender on the move. And then passing the ball to number 6. As we can see, there are also the yellow flaps in the middle of the field. And I like to put those flaps there to kind of give them an idea of how small the field will be during a normal match. Because if they're looking on the inside over that yellow line, they're going into the danger zone where they don't want to be losing the ball. So I'm giving them a visual cue to think about where the space would be. Yes, what you can do is you could remove the cones and put a defender in there, but I want to train the skills, the elimination skills. The last exercise that I wanted to show is more match specific. I've taken a lot less cones, a lot less lines to make it simple. But in this exercise, what we can see is the player being passed to the left back position, and it's a 2 against 2. And what the players would have to do is they would have to get the ball over the red flap line. The reason I don't put a mini goal here or a goal with a keeper is because I want my left midfielder attacking the space. And if I put a mini goal there, then the left midfielder will pass the ball along the line. No, I want the player to attack and be part of the attack. What could happen, you see a 3 against 3 here, is if the defender, it's a team in red, receive the ball or take the ball from the blue team, they can counter. And as you can see, the player's waiting in that golden transfer place. If the red team get the ball, it'll be a 3 against 3. Everyone attacks from red, everyone defends from blue, apart from the player with the ball. But we can also change this. We can also say it'll be a 5 against 5 or a 3 against 3 in the corner. But I would not do a exercise like this to train the skills. And yes, training under pressure is a good way to improve your decision making, but I would really focus on zooming in. Can the players receive on their forehand and drag the ball to their backhand in one fluid motion? If they can do that, they're ready for the 2 against 2 exercises. And yes, 2 against 2 with transitions and counters, 3 against 3s are extremely enjoyable. So do them, practice the skills to be better at the skills that you need during the matches. And that's something in my philosophy is extremely important. And if you can zoom into an exercise, that is the most important in terms of skills. And I would, for a session that's an hour and a half, an hour and 3/4, I would do these 4 exercises. And then I would usually finish with a game, maybe 20 minutes, 2 times 10 minutes, and then focus on receiving under pressure. I would force and tell that both players have to play man-to-man marking. And then while on the ball, focusing on dynamic receiving. If you receive the ball, attack the other side. Something that works very well with juniors is if you're trying to get them to use a principle in a game scenario, such as the golden transfer we talked about, then what we could do is we could say every goal is 2 points. But if you do a golden transfer and get the ball to the other side, you also gain a point for your team. And they're focused on then the principles during the training itself and not just the skills, because the skills should be automatic because they've trained them to a level that they don't need to think about them. That's me for the session. I think it's very important that you build up to what you want to do and don't be afraid to zoom in really far to make the skills you need the players to be able to do at a high level. I think as coaches, especially, we go too far and too deep too early. Even for senior players training 3 or 4 times a week, the players need to be able to do the basic skills at a very high level. Now, if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Let's bring on those questions, people. We've been listening carefully to your presentation, so I've not seen many questions pop up right now. But now is the moment to bring these questions, coaches, while we are live, while we have Robert on the call here. So, but Robert, while the coaches are typing those questions in, already one from me. How would you differ this from for a very young team? Would you approach this differently for a team that is just making their first steps on the full field?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think if we're talking about really first steps, the players need to learn how to hold the stick correctly. And let's just say, for argument's sake, they've been playing hockey for maybe 6 months and they understand how to move the ball to the direction that they need to. It's not fast, but they know how to move the ball. Then you want to do fun exercises. Maybe if you can go back to my screen, I can show what I mean.
There we go.
What we can do, yes, what we can do is we can have 2 different types of eliminations here. Oh, I just want 1 cone. And then, as all children like it, make it a game, make it fun by having a way to win. So we've got a team here who are going to start and a team here and a relay race. By these cones, what we want the player to do is you want to make them have a drag from left to right. The drag from left to right is the most important skill for juniors to learn because you're taking the ball from the forehand of the opponent to the backhand of the opponent. And it's easier than the other way around because you're moving it with your backhand and controlling it with your forehand. Now, this is an exercise that I personally really like to have cones like this because what I would like the player to do is we want them to run like this and they drag the ball through the cones. And then maybe they run to this here, and we give everybody a ball, and we can put a cone here. And the goal is the first team who can get all 3 of their balls and put them next to the cone is the winner. And you can't start until the person before you has got to the cone. But this one here, this gate, is a lot better than 3 cones because in a gate, they can choose how fast, how wide, what angle they want to do. My opinion, something that a lot of trainers do that is incorrect, is I'm just going to remove the arrows and I'm really going to zoom in so I can show this. A lot of children will run towards the cone and they will stand this far away from the cone with the ball. And millimeters from the cone, they will move all the way to the side. Now, if I'm standing millimeters away from a cone, it's not going to take the ball off me. But if I'm this close to a defender, they'll take the ball off me. So what I like to have with the gates is the players will usually go through the gate, make it a bit larger. They'll go through the gate here. And if this cone is a defender, they're not in the space of the defender. So we want them to go through the gate as early as possible, meaning they won't be on the defender. And please, trainers, even especially for the smallest children, if you're giving a training and they have to do an action around the cone, make them do the action at least a meter away from the cone. So they learn running around opponents, not standing on top of them and trying to go around. It will make a huge difference to the future.
No, absolutely.
At the moment, I'm unable to hear you. I don't.
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
sorry. I've put myself on mute. Yeah, standard
No, don't worry.
error,
Okay.
standard user error for me
No
here.
problem.
Josephine,
Okay.
question: what are your challenges when trying to coach these themes?
To coach these themes, I have a very big definition split in my philosophy between coaching and training. Coaching is helping someone to make the right decisions and improving on their hockey vocabulary, what all the different things they can use in regards to playing a match. I don't think you coach during a training. I think you train during a training. Training is the skills, abilities. But if we're talking about coaching these terms, how do I make my players realize that this is a good, actually, a good example. We played a match 7 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, maybe, with the men's team, and the other team played sometimes zone marking, sometimes man marking, sometimes zone marking, sometimes man marking. And what's really good for my team is they've learned to play against both, but I have to tell them when to change. Let's say something very important for zone marking is pass between the lines, pass stick to stick. The other team changed the man marking. We haven't realized, and we pass the ball to the stick, and they come into a 1-against-1 and they lose the ball. So to coach players, you really have to look at the opponent. And something that I would give, especially for coaches of younger teams, you can decide what the other team are playing on an individual basis. I'll stand next to the opponent, really close to him, and then I'll move to this side, move to this side. And if he's really focused on me and he's moving with me, they're probably playing man-to-man marking. If he's ignoring me and looking at the space that I'm trying to get into, he's probably playing zone marking. And having a game plan for what do we do against man marking, what do we do against zone marking helps, but really get the players, ask them questions. What do we do if they play man marking? What do we change if they're playing zone marking? Lots and lots of questions. And usually there are a few players in a team who realize it and see it earlier. Goalkeepers are usually a good one. The mid from a team is usually a good one because if they're playing man marking, they're usually marking the midfielder very strict. And make it a rule in the game, the first minute of the game of every quarter, shout to your teammates, they're playing zone marking, they're playing man marking. And then when the other team becomes more dynamic, you'll feel it because you're used to looking for it. I hope that answers your question. It's difficult, but don't tell them between the breaks, maybe, but let them see it.
Yeah, so follow up from Josephine here as well. So interesting listening to Danny Newcomb this week on another podcast around as coaches, we coach solutions rather than setting problems for the players. And do you agree with that? And does this link to what you are saying about players not seeing the difference in and out of possession systems while the game is live?
Uh, no, yes and no. I think if I look at the first half of the question, I think it's important to realize that in a match, it's the whole game. Every second, they're getting problems thrown at them. The players will put pressure on different every single time. Maybe they play against a very physical left back or a very small left back. So you don't have to give them more problems during the match. But I think we give solutions the wrong way. And this is less training, more psychology based. But I think it's very important you say to the players, but what are your options? What could you do? A lot of players will tell you what the problem is. Oh, I can't get the ball to the midfielder. Oh, no one's, something I hear a lot from the teams that I coach is no one's running into space. No one's making space. Well, they are making space, but because I'm receiving it slowly, I can't make a movement to make space for myself to give the ball. So ask the players, what could you do differently? Well, what could you do differently? Well, could you receive the ball in a larger action? Could you maybe try a give and go? And then ask them what they think they can try and let them go and try it. Because less than 0.02% of games, if I'm guessing, are important. The rest of them are learning. And yes, if you're an under 16 team playing at the very highest level and the parents are watching and they want you to win, that's fantastic. Get the players better. That's everything you need to do as a coach. You are there to facilitate their learning. So don't tell them the answer. If possible, and they're struggling, maybe they substitute, ask them what their options could be. And if they don't know, you can help them. And the phases that we have, sorry, it's a long answer, but it's a very important thing for me personally, is the first section is the analogy of eating food. Children who've never eaten a certain food before, you can't tell them if it's nice or it isn't nice because they haven't tried it before. So let them try it and they can make a decision. And that's the acquiring the skill phase. If the players, let's call it high ball, if you say to the player, play a high ball if you get full pressure and the players never practice it, you can't expect them to do it. But when you say to them, try it, and they try it a few times, then that's the thing to reinforce it. That's when you would say, this food is healthy for you. This food is bad for you. And you can advise them, do this more often or do it less. What I really like to say is get players to try something that's out their comfort zone so they learn in this situation where I would need to do the high ball. And motivated players will go back in a training and practice the high ball because they know they need it for that skill.
Yeah, so the follow-up comment from Josephine is, yes, understand what you're saying. I think what Danny was saying in that podcast is that players can tell you the problem, but maybe not spot it while in a live game. So we should be setting more problems in training situations.
Yeah. And I think something that helps with this is, I said it 100 times, 101 won't be a problem. Develop their skills. If they have the skills, they can get out of almost any situation. And it sounds like a very easy thing to say as a coach. Every coach wants to get the photo of them for their profile photo, holding a whiteboard, talking to the players. But it's about training, develop the skills. You don't need to give them a solution because they can find it themselves. The hardest players to defend against in history are players with good skills.
Oh,
In any
absolutely.
sport.
Absolutely. Question from Johnny. So, how do you find the balance between having the deepest fullbacks do a give and go, while not leaving the backline exposed with not enough defenders if there's a turnover?
Yeah, very simple. I'll show this on my whiteboard if that's okay.
Yep. Up on your whiteboard, bringing you back here.
Yes. No, I meant literally from
Literally the
yeah, sorry,
whiteboard.
I
Yeah.
said whiteboard.
Yeah.
Yeah. My bad. Okay. I think actually if do it on XPS, it's going to be a lot clearer, I think, than me having it with the sun shining on my whiteboard. So
Yeah.
this is a situation where this player as a left back would attack and then maybe attack this space. I personally like to have this as a connection, and this player would usually come lower to initiate a give and go, because if this player comes lower, bring the player with them. Playing against man marking, don't forget. And what would happen is this player will pass the ball and then attack the space. And then this player, who's already come lower, will take over the position. And I like to work with, on the left-hand side, you've got 3 players who are working together. And on the right-hand side, 3 players. If you're playing with 4 at the back, which is more common, sometimes I actually prefer 4 at the back against man marking. The reason I like having 4 at the back against man marking is if the other players for the other team are putting pressure on, you can put your players very wide at the back. And when this ball gets passed to the side, this player's man responsibility is to run all the way over here. But the issue with that is doing a give and go like this. Oh, I need another player. A give and go like this. This player is taking over the space. If we lose the ball now, he's on the wrong side of the defensive cover line. That's why I personally, if I want to play very dynamically, like to have 3. But we could say, okay, but then you initiate earlier and take the position over. But in my opinion, if you're planning on playing dynamically at the back, I would have 2 in the center and maybe 1 higher, and really focus on coming down on the right side of the defense if we lose the ball, so that this player can go past, this player can take it over. And if they go with you, I said it earlier in the, I'll set it up exactly like I would see it happen in a game, like this. This player is on the right midfield position. This is kind of a connecting player between midfield and attack. So this player will receive the ball while this player is coming lower. This player will come with them. Man marking like this. And when this player goes over the top and this player goes like this, and the other team now decide, okay, I'm going to go with my player, and this player thinks I'm going to stay here. What can now happen is this player can receive the ball and then pass to the other side of the field. And because this player is actually a forward, has gone with his player, there's no way this player can get pressure from the other team. Because if this player puts pressure on, it's a free attack. If this player puts pressure on, it's a free attack. And this is something, like I said, a high ball while moving into this space is brilliant. So the other team have to make a decision. Do I stay or do I go? It sounds like a song, but if I stay here, then this player can make a 2-against-1.
Mm-hmm.
If I go with them, then we can make a 2-against-1 here. And this is something I would teach my players on the whiteboard, but it's about the skills, as I said, 102 times dynamically. So I hope that's answered your question.
I hope, Johnny, if not, let us know if you need further clarifications there. We've got the possibly final question. Was we approaching the hour mark? I'm seeing here, but we have one more question here from Josephine. Looking for that question. Yeah, here we go. How long does it take for you to see the isolated skills being using in the player's performance under pressure in match situations?
Instantly, literally instantly. Now, if you're asking, do they work? I think if a skill works or not isn't, did I beat my player? No, it's not that simple. If players move the ball, they are using the skills. They're trying, if they stand there completely still like a statue, yes, then you're not seeing it. But even from an age of 6 years old, 7 years old, in Netherlands, a lot of children start around 4. Most of them start around 5. So they've already had a few years of training. If they are moving the ball while an opponent is putting pressure on them, they are using their skills under pressure. Does it work? No. Does the ball move faster than other players? Never at that age. But using their skills, it's difficult to teach young children pre-scanning, but pre-scanning is the best way to see if skills are working. And in the last workshop I did, I talked a lot about pre-scanning, but at a young age, isolated skills don't work either. So it's very difficult to see if they work in a match situation. Yeah, I think the best thing to do is, are they trying to move the ball? And if they're trying to move the ball under pressure, then you've already seen that they're practicing the skill.
Well, absolutely.
It's not a straight answer, unfortunately, but hockey isn't that easy to teach. It's a process. You can't say it's
hockey isn't,
yes or
and
no.
coaching is either not either. So yeah. Okay, coaches.
No, exactly.
No more questions from you. Yeah, Johnny says thank you. Cleared that up for me beautifully. And Josephine also.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Thank you. So interesting. Thanks for all the responses. That's why we do this, Josephine. We are glad that you made this interactive for us. We have more coaches on the call here, guys. So not everybody should be this shy. You can all bring your questions, but thanks, Josephine and Johnny, for bringing yours today, and especially thanks, Robert, for again sharing the knowledge with us here. And it was an interesting session, as clear from the questions that followed up. And yeah, looking forward to seeing more of your principles in training in the year to come with the next sessions. So, Robert, thanks for sharing the knowledge with us. Coaches, thank you for making this an interactive sessions. Talk to all of you soon, and bye bye.